The clock read 2:47 a.m. when she finally slithered into bed beside me, her body reeking of perfume that wasn't meant for me. I didn't move, didn't react. I just listened to her breathing as she settled in, sighing like she was actually exhausted from whatever alibi she had concocted this time. I could feel the heat of her body against mine, and it took every ounce of control I had not to roll over and grab her throat right then and there. But no. That would be too easy. Instead, I let her believe she was safe. "Long night?" I murmured, my voice thick with feigned sleep. She tensed for half a second, so slight it would be unnoticeable to anyone who wasn't already watching for it. But I was. I had been for months. "Yeah," she muttered, her voice coated in that fake sweetness she reserved for when she was covering her tracks. "Work ran late, then I grabbed drinks with the girls. You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. I knew every filthy little detail of where she had been, who she had been with, and what she had done. I had the texts, the pictures, the sickeningly desperate messages she had sent to him, promising him things she had long since denied me. And she thought I was stupid enough to believe her. I let silence settle between us, pretending to be drifting back into sleep. My breathing slowed, steady. I could feel her relax beside me, convinced that once again, she had gotten away with it. "Oh, darling. Not this time." I lay there, my mind a razor's edge of calculation and fury, listening as her breathing evened out into the rhythm of sleep. She was comfortable. Safe. Believing, as always, that I was the fool in this marriage. She had no idea. I turned onto my side, facing her, watching the faint glow of the moonlight catch on her hair. She looked peaceful, like she wasn't carrying the weight of betrayal on her shoulders. Like she hadn't just spent hours tangled up in another man's sheets before crawling back into mine. I clenched my jaw, forcing my breathing to stay steady. Now wasn't the time. I had spent the last month preparing for this. Gathering evidence, setting things in motion. The plan was already in motion. And she? She was just a puppet dancing along to strings she couldn't even see. The bank accounts, drained. The lease, transferred into my name. Every credit card she had used under my name, frozen. By the time she woke up, she wouldn't have a cent to her name. But that was just the beginning. Tomorrow, she'd wake up in my world. A world where her lies no longer worked. A world where every illusion she had spun came crashing down around her. And by the end of it, she'd be begging. Not for forgiveness. For mercy. I was already awake when she stirred. She stretched, sighing contentedly, as if she hadn't just spent the night betraying me. As if she hadn't spent hours with him before sneaking back into the bed of the man she had vowed to be faithful to. She reached for her phone on the nightstand. That's when the first crack appeared in her perfect little world. She sat up, squinting at the screen. The way her brows furrowed told me everything. Her banking app wasn't working. She tapped furiously, her breath quickening. "What the hell?" she muttered under her breath. I watched her struggle, silent, a spectator to her unraveling. Then, she tried her credit card. Declined. Again. Declined. She scrambled out of bed, muttering a string of curses as she searched for her laptop. I could see the panic creeping in now, the way her fingers trembled slightly as she typed. I sat up slowly. "Something wrong?" She whipped around, startled, eyes flashing with irritation. "My accounts are locked." I feigned concern. "Locked? That's strange." She studied me, her suspicion barely masked by frustration. "Yeah. My cards aren't working either." "Did you?" She stopped mid-sentence, narrowing her eyes. I met her gaze, letting silence stretch between us. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She knew. The game was over. Now, the real fun began. Her breath hitched, just for a second. I saw it, the flash of realization in her eyes. The understanding that something was very, very wrong. "You did this," she said, voice low and accusatory. I leaned back against the headboard, stretching as if this was just another lazy morning. "Did what?" "Don't play games with me, Nick." Her voice had that sharp edge now, the one she used when she was trying to assert control. The same tone she probably used on her little boy toy when she wanted him to fall in line. "What the hell did you do to my accounts?" I smiled. Slow. Deliberate. "You mean my accounts? The ones you spent months straining behind my back? The ones you used to fund your little hotel rendezvous?" Color drained from her face. I continued, savoring every word. "Yeah. I shut all that down. Transferred everything out of joint accounts. Froze your credit cards. You don't have a dime to your name, sweetheart. She blinked. Once. Twice. Then, as expected, she switched tactics. The anger softened, replaced by wide, pleading eyes. Baby. I don't know what you're talking about. This has to be a mistake. I haven't done anything. Save it. My voice came out cold, sharp enough to cut. I know everything. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She was good at lying, exceptional, really. But for the first time since I'd met her, she looked lost. I stood, stretching again, like I wasn't savoring every second of this. Go ahead. Call your friends, I made air quotes around the word. See if they'll come to your rescue. Oh, wait, I chuckled darkly. Your phone's locked too. Along with your email. And your car? Yeah, that's gone. Repossessed this morning. Her breath came out in quick, shallow bursts. You can't. I can, I cut in smoothly. And I did. Silence. And then, the real panic set in. I watched her crumble, watched her desperate mind search for a way out. She had always been so sure of herself, so smug, so untouchable. Not anymore. Now, she was mine. And I wasn't done yet. She bolted. I expected it. She rushed past me, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood as she darted toward the front door. Maybe she thought she could run to a friend's house, call her lover, escape whatever nightmare she just woke up in. I didn't bother to stop her. Because I already had. She yanked the door handle, locked. She twisted the deadbolt, nothing. Then she saw it. The new lock. The one that required a key she didn't have. She spun around, eyes wild. Nick, open the fucking door. I strolled toward her, slow and casual. Where are you going, baby? She banged on the door with her fists. Let me out. I sighed dramatically. Why would I do that? This is your home, isn't it? Our home? I cocked my head. Or is that only true when you're not spreading your legs for another man? Her face twisted in fury. You were insane. I smirked. You were just figuring that out? She turned toward the windows, but the curtains were drawn. The only light came from the dim glow of the kitchen behind me. She was trapped, and she knew it. Then came the tears. The fake ones. Nick, please, she whimpered, stepping closer, voice softening. I don't know what's going on, but if you're upset, we can talk about it. I love you. I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. That's cute. Her mask slipped. Just for a second. I leaned in, lowering my voice to a whisper. Do you think I'm stupid? That I'd just let you do this to me and walk away clean? She took a step back, hitting the door. I followed. Your friends? They won't help you. I smiled. Your little boy toy? He won't answer your calls. In fact. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Here. Let me show you something. I tapped the screen and turned it toward her. A video played, security footage from the hotel where she'd spent so many nights betraying me. But it wasn't just her and him. It was him with another woman. Her face crumbled. Oh yeah, I murmured, savoring her devastation. He's been cheating on you, too. Did you really think you were special? I let that sink in. Let her feel the same kind of betrayal she had made me feel. She started shaking, her hands clenching into fists. You bastard. I grinned. And yet, I'm the one who still has a future. Her breath hitched. What does that mean? I stepped back, savoring the fear in her eyes. It means this is just the beginning. She didn't speak for a long moment. I could see the war happening inside her, anger, panic, desperation. She thought she was always in control, always 10 steps ahead. Not anymore. She swallowed hard. What do you want? I smirked. There it is. The shift. She was no longer demanding, no longer screaming. Now she was pleading. I stepped closer, tilting my head. Want? I echoed. That's an interesting question, considering what you wanted was to lie to my face every single day while you whored yourself out to another man. She flinched at the word. Good. I didn't. I raised a finger. Don't lie. Not now. Not when we both know the truth. Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing. I took my time, circling her like a predator. You spent months thinking I was blind. That I was too stupid to notice the way you looked at your phone when you thought I wasn't watching. The way you worked late but came home reeking of cologne that wasn't mine. You must have really thought I was a fucking idiot. I thought, she caught herself, biting down on whatever pathetic excuse she was about to offer. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper. You thought you'd get away with it. She swallowed hard. I took another step back, sighing. But the funny thing is, I'm not like you. I don't lie when I say I love someone. I don't pretend to care while fucking someone else behind their back. I tilted my head. I told you I'd always take care of you, didn't I? Her eyes darted toward me, wary. Nick, I grinned. And I meant it. With a flick of my hand, I reached into my pocket and tossed something at her feet. She flinched as it hit the floor, a single, crumpled plane ticket. Her gaze snapped up to mine. One-way ticket, I said smoothly. Back to your parents. Back to whatever miserable life you had before I made the mistake of giving you everything. Her breath hitched. I folded my arms. You have no money. No car. No home. No friends. You have nothing, and you deserve nothing. I took a step closer. So, you have two choices. You can take the ticket and disappear from my life forever. She stared at me, silent. Or, I continued, my voice turning sharp, you can stay and see what happens next. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. I smiled. Choose wisely. She didn't pick up the ticket. Not yet. Instead, she did what I expected, what all manipulators do when they realize they've lost control. She tried to twist the narrative. Her eyes glistened with fake tears, her lower lip trembling as she whispered, Nick. Please. We can fix this. I almost laughed. We? I repeated, raising a brow. We can fix this? I gestured between us, between the broken, rotting corpse of what used to be a marriage. She took a small step forward, hands clasped in front of her chest like she was making a goddamn prayer. I made a mistake, she murmured, voice soft, delicate, like she was suddenly fragile. I wasn't thinking. I felt alone, and I lost myself. I tilted my head. You lost yourself in his bed? Repeatedly. She winced, but I wasn't finished. You weren't lost, Rachel, I continued, voice hard. You knew exactly what you were doing. Every time you snuck around, every time you lied to my face, every time you let him touch you, you chose that. She shook her head, stepping closer. No, Stop. One word. Cold. Commanding. She froze. I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly before I spoke again. You don't love me, I said, calm and controlled. You love control. You love the security I gave you, the comfort. The power you thought you had over me. She shook her head more violently now, tears slipping down her cheeks. No, that's not true. You don't miss me, I cut in. You miss the life I built for you. And now that it's slipping through your fingers, now that your little fantasy world is crashing down. Now you want to fix things? I chuckled darkly. How convenient. Her breathing grew unsteady, her hands trembling as she reached out toward me. I'll do anything, she whispered, voice barely audible. I'll prove it. I'll cut him off. I'll change my number. I'll be better. I watched her, the pathetic display of crocodile tears, the desperation dripping from every word. Then I smiled. You think this is about forgiveness? I asked, my voice a quiet blade. No, sweetheart. I stepped even closer, leaning in until our noses were inches apart. This is about consequences. And just like that, I saw it, the moment she finally understood. There was no saving herself. Not this time. Her breathing was ragged now, her eyes starting between the crumpled plane ticket on the floor and my face. She was running out of options. You don't have to do this, she whispered, voice shaking. We can talk about this. We can. I tilted my head. Talk? I echoed. Like how you talked to me when you were lying to my face? Or maybe like how you talked to him while I was home alone like a fucking idiot? Her lips parted, but she didn't have an answer. Tell me something, Rachel. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. When you were in his bed, when you were sneaking back into mine, did you ever feel guilty? Silence. She didn't move. Didn't speak. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. That's what I thought. Her fingers curled into fists. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I let out a low, bitter laugh. You didn't mean to? I repeated. You spent months lying, sneaking around, fucking another man behind my back. Don't insult me by pretending it was an accident. Her face twisted with something close to regret, but I knew better. It wasn't guilt over what she had done, it was fear over what was happening to her now. She was losing. You were right, she finally admitted, her voice hollow. I did it. I lied. I cheated. I betrayed you. She looked at me, eyes burning with something almost defiant. But I don't deserve this. I smiled. Cold. Cruel. You deserve worse. She swallowed hard, shoulders tensing. So what now? She murmured. I let the silence stretch between us before answering. Now? I gestured toward the ticket. Now, you take that and leave. Walk out of here, get on that plane, and disappear. She stared at me, jaw clenched. And if I don't? I smirked. Then you'll see what real punishment looks like. She didn't move. Her eyes flicked to the plane ticket on the floor, then back to me. I could see the gears turning, the calculations running through her head. She was trying to find a way out, a way to regain control. But there was none. You were bluffing, she said finally, crossing her arms. A weak attempt at defiance. You wouldn't actually do anything to me. I chuckled, slow and deliberate. Oh, Rachel, I murmured, stepping closer. You still think you know me, don't you? Her jaw clenched, but she didn't step back. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen. Her own voice filled the room. God, I wish Nick would just disappear. If he died in his sleep, I wouldn't even care. Her breath caught in her throat. I tilted my head. You remember saying that, don't you? Her face paled. How did you? I smirked. I hear everything, sweetheart. I let the audio play a little longer, just enough for her to hear herself laughing with him, talking about how she was going to milk me for everything before leaving me in the dust. Then I stopped it. Silence. She licked her lips, trying to steady her breathing. That's just talk, she said quickly. You can't. Oh, but I can. I leaned in, lowering my voice to a whisper. This is just one recording. I have more. Texts. Videos. Bank statements. Everything. She swallowed hard. You might think I'm bluffing, I continued. But do you really want to test me? Her hands trembled slightly. Take the ticket, I said, my voice a quiet command. Because if you don't, Rachel, I will make sure you regret it. Her breath was shaky now, her mask slipping entirely. For the first time since this started, I saw true, unfiltered fear in her eyes. Good. Your choice, I murmured. And then I waited. Her hands clenched at her sides, her breathing uneven. She looked at the ticket again, her mind racing, desperate to find some way out. She had none. You can't do this, she whispered. I smiled. I already have. Her lips trembled, but she wasn't crying anymore. No, I could see something else creeping into her expression, resentment. Hatred. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry she had lost. Fine, she spat, bending down to snatch the ticket off the floor. You want me gone? I'll go. I gave her a mockingly slow clap. Smart choice. She turned on her heel, marching toward the bedroom to pack her things. I didn't stop her. I just followed, leaning against the doorway as she yanked open drawers and stuffed clothes into a bag with furious, jerky movements. You are enjoying this, she muttered, not looking at me. I smirked. More than you'll ever know. She threw a pair of jeans into the suitcase with unnecessary force. You think this makes you better than me? Oh, no, I said casually. I know it does. Her hands curled into fists. You were sick. I shrugged. And you're a liar, a cheat, and a pathetic excuse for a wife. So, I'd say we're even. She spun to face me, her face twisted in pure venom. You think you've won? That you'll just forget about me and move on? I tilted my head. Oh, I won't forget you, Rachel. I took a slow step forward, letting my voice drop to a dangerous whisper. I'll remember every single detail of how I tore your world apart. And I'll enjoy it. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed, but she held her ground. Good. I wanted her to feel everything. Your flight leaves in 6 hours, I reminded her. Be packed and gone before then. And with that, I turned and walked away. Because the best part? She still had no idea what was coming next. She packed in silence, her movements stiff with barely contained rage. Every now and then, I heard her mutter something under her breath, curses, maybe. Prayers. I didn't care. By the time she emerged from the bedroom, suitcase in hand, her face was blank. The tears were gone. The fear had faded. All that remained was cold, simmering hatred. She stopped in front of me. You'll regret this. I smiled. Doubt it. She rolled her eyes and pushed past me, heading for the front door. I followed slowly, savoring every second. As she reached for the handle, I spoke. Oh, and Rachel? She froze but didn't turn around. I stepped closer, just enough to lower my voice to a near whisper. You might want to check your phone. Her hand twitched. Slowly, she pulled out her phone, unlocking it with stiff fingers. And then she saw it. Her breath hitched. She scrolled, eyes widening, face draining of color. No, she whispered. I leaned against the wall, watching her break in real time. Surprise. She whipped around, eyes blazing. You bastard. I chuckled. Which part? The bank accounts? The leaked texts? Or maybe the sweet little goodbye message I sent to everyone you know? Her grip tightened around the phone, her entire body trembling. You ruined me. I tilted my head. No, sweetheart. You ruined you. She sucked in a sharp breath, her nostrils flaring as she tried to hold back the fury threatening to consume her. Now, I said smoothly, stepping aside and gesturing toward the door. Get the hell out of my house. She stared at me, breathing hard, her fingers twitching like she wanted to claw my eyes out. Then, finally, she turned, yanked open the door, and walked out without another word. The door slammed shut behind her. And I smiled. Because she still hadn't realized the worst part. She wasn't just leaving me. She was walking into a world where everyone now knew exactly who she was. And there was no coming back from that. The moment the door slammed shut, silence filled the house. A deep, eerie stillness. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of it settle. She was gone. But I wasn't done. I walked over to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to watch her stumble down the driveway. She was frantic now, pacing in circles, her phone clutched in a shaking hand as she scrolled through the wreckage of her life. The messages I sent, to her friends, her family, her boss. The proof of every lie she had ever told, every betrayal she had committed. I saw her dial a number. Probably him. I smirked, already knowing what would happen next. She held the phone to her ear, her face flickering with a brief moment of hope, until it died just as quickly. He wasn't answering. Of course he wasn't. Because I had already made sure he knew everything too. I leaned against the window frame, watching as she let out a strangled sob, dropping her phone to her side. Reality was setting in. There was no one left. No more safety nets. No more lies to fall back on. I had burned everything. And the best part? I did it without ever laying a hand on her. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. She stood there, frozen in the middle of the driveway, gripping her useless phone like it could somehow undo everything. But there was nothing left to undo. I watched her from the window, savoring every second. The realization. The panic. The utter collapse of everything she had built on lies. Then, like clockwork, the second wave of calls began. She tried her friends first, those shallow, backstabbing women who cheered her on behind my back. The ones who covered for her, lied for her, encouraged her. I already knew what would happen. One by one, the calls went straight to voicemail. I had sent them messages too. Screenshots. Receipts. The kind of dirt that made sure none of them would touch her with a 10-foot pole. She tried her job next. I could almost hear the tremble in her voice as she left a voicemail, trying to explain away the explicit messages I had forwarded to HR. No one was calling her back. And then, finally, she called her family. That was my favorite part. I had been patient with that one. I had spent months gathering every piece of filth, every dirty secret she had hidden from them. The cheating, the lies, the money she had stolen, not just from me, but from them. Her parents had been her last resort. Her final safety net. And I had ripped that away too. I watched as she listened to the voicemail they left in response. I didn't know what they said, but I could see it in her eyes. It was over. She let out a strangled sob, gripping the sides of her head like she could physically hold herself together. I smiled, stepping away from the window. She had spent so long weaving her web of lies. And now she was choking on the threads. She stood there for what felt like forever, her body shaking, her breathing ragged. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the unraveling, the collapse. The exact second she realized she was truly, completely alone. She wiped her face roughly, sniffing back the tears as she stared blankly at her phone. Then, with shaky hands, she tried one last number. A cab. I smirked. Good girl. She was finally starting to understand. There was no fighting this. No fixing it. There was only leaving. I didn't need to watch anymore. I had done my part. The moment she stepped into that car, she was out of my life for good. I walked away from the window, stretching my arms with a slow exhale. It felt lighter now. The air. The house. Everything. For the first time in months, I wasn't carrying the weight of her lies anymore. I made my way to the kitchen, grabbed a glass, and poured myself a drink. As the ice clinked against the glass, I heard the distant sound of a car pulling up. Perfect timing. I took a slow sip, letting the burn of whiskey settle in my throat, savoring the moment. By the time she reached the airport, the last of my plans would already be in motion. She thought I had taken everything from her. She had no idea what was still left to lose. The cab's headlights flickered through the window as it pulled up to the house. She hesitated. For a split second, I thought she might turn around, might make some pathetic last attempt to beg for mercy. But no. She gritted her teeth, straightened her shoulders, and walked to the car like she still had some dignity left. I took another sip of whiskey, smirking as I watched her open the door and slide into the back seat. The driver loaded her suitcase into the trunk, completely unaware that he was chauffeuring a woman whose life had just been systematically destroyed. The car rolled away, its taillights fading into the night. And that was it. She was gone. I let out a slow breath, rolling my shoulders. The house was silent now, peaceful. I took a moment to enjoy it, to soak in the victory I had spent months orchestrating. But I wasn't quite finished. I reached for my phone, opened a folder labeled Final Move, and tapped a single file. A video began uploading. The footage? Security cam clips from the hotel, spliced together with her own messages, her own words. All of it tied together into a beautiful, damning confession. I didn't send it to her this time. I sent it to him. Her lover. Her accomplice. The one she had thrown everything away for. And as I watched the loading bar hit 100%, I smiled. Because by the time she landed, she wouldn't just be alone. She'd be hunted. I leaned back against the counter, watching the progress bar disappear. The message was sent. Now, all I had to do was wait. I didn't have to wait long. My phone vibrated violently against the counter. I glanced at the screen, smirking at the caller ID. Him. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then I answered. Silence on the other end. Shaky breathing. Then, finally, his voice, low, seething. What the fuck is this? I swirled the whiskey in my glass. Exactly what it looks like. A sharp inhale. You're lying. I chuckled. Am I? I let the silence stretch, savoring the tension, the realization crawling its way into his skull. She told me you two were over, he spat. That you were just some bitter asshole who wouldn't let go. I grinned. And you believed her? Silence. I could practically hear his world shifting beneath him, the foundation cracking. He wasn't just pissed, he was humiliated. Where is she? He demanded. I checked the time, sipping my drink. On a plane. Flying straight back to the miserable life she tried to escape. He cursed under his breath, his fury barely contained. You think this is over? I laughed, really laughed this time. Oh, buddy. For you? It's just getting started. Then I hung up. Let him stew in it. Let him burn in it. By the time she landed, she wouldn't just have nothing. She'd have an enemy waiting for her. And that? That was the final stroke of my masterpiece. The call ended, and with it, the last tie binding me to her. I set the phone down, exhaling slowly, letting the weight of it all finally sink in. She was gone. Her world? Shattered. Her lover? Betrayed, furious, and soon to be hunting her down. Everything she had built on lies, manipulation, and deceit? Burned to ash. I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, fresh. The scent of rain lingered from the night before, washing the world clean. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. No more doubts. No more pain. No more second-guessing myself, wondering if I could have saved something that was always doomed to rot. I pulled my wedding ring from my finger, twirling it between my fingers one last time. Then, with a flick of my wrist, I tossed it into the street. I didn't watch where it landed. I didn't need to. She was nothing now. A ghost. A lesson. A scar I would wear, but never let define me. I turned back inside, shutting the door behind me. And just like that, I moved on.